Hey, what's going on, everybody? Brent Hyden here, coming at you on this Wednesday morning, talking tonight's 10-game slate around the association. Gonna dig in real quick, but before I do, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button down below. And if you're not already doing so, make sure you hit that follow button over on the Twitter machine at Brent Hyden1. My Twitter handle is in the description down below. But without further ado, let's go ahead and dig in because we got lots to talk about. Starting with the first game of the night, Oklahoma City at Cleveland. This game is a very interesting one because we have the news that Russell Westbrook is not going to play. That's going to change things, change how we attack this game a little bit. The total on this one is OKC favored by 6 with a 220.5 over under. Um, Dennis Schroeder, pretty much the guy that's is going to be locked and loaded in just about everyone's lineups. 6,900 over on DraftKings, and he is 6,400 over on FanDuel. I don't care what his ownership's going to be. I'm just mashing him in. We know the production is going to be there without Russell Westbrook in the lineup. Uh, he's just a usage monster. Over 30% usage rate, 1.11 fantasy points per minute. Without Westbrook on the floor. Obviously, that goes down just a touch with whenever he's sharing the floor with Paul George, but I just really don't give a damn. He's just going to be locked into my lineups against a Cleveland offense or Cleveland defense that is giving up 118 points per game to opponents. So Dennis Schroeder, your chalk option. He's a core guy. I'm just mashing that lock button on him tonight. Paul George is a little bit interesting. Over on DraftKings at 9,100, I absolutely love him at this price. Obviously, we know, again, usage rate 34% without Westbrook on the floor. Sharing the floor with Schroeder is going to lower that just a touch again, but still monster upside especially in this matchup against this Cleveland defense, if you want to call it that. Over on FanDuel at 10-2, it is a little tough to stomach paying for him at 10-2 whenever you have LeBron for 1,000 more. So I can understand fading him on FanDuel. It's not like it's not a smash spot for Paul George over on FanDuel, but I still like him a significant amount. So if you want to build around him and Schroeder, feel free. But on DraftKings, it's a little bit of a different story. So I love him over on DraftKings. Steven Adams is going to take a slight hit to his production. So does Jeremy Grant with Westbrook off the floor. Jeremy Grant at 5,400. I'm still okay with him in cash. 5,100 over on DraftKings. I'm still okay with him in cash, just because you know the minutes are going to be there. It's a great matchup, so you can still roll him out if he fits your lineup. There's some other guys that I'm going to talk about tonight that I like a little bit more, but still a fine price for him. And then Adams, I'm not going to force him into my lineups, but if he just happened to fit, then feel free. And that pretty much does it on the OKC side of things. I'm okay in tournaments, rolling out some Alex Abrinas, especially at his price, 3,500 on DraftKings. We've seen the minutes start to climb for him, 30 minutes in 2 of the last 3. He's going to shoot a little bit more without Russ on the floor. They're going to need someone to be able to knock down some shots. So I actually think he's a decent tournament option over on DraftKings. Over on FanDuel, I absolutely love him. 3,800. He can be plugged in as one of your punt options tonight and drop a score if he sucks. But there's a decent chance that he has a solid outing here. So I do like Alex Abrinas a decent amount. Flipping over to the Cleveland side of things, we have George Hill coming off a monster game, 4K over on DraftKings, gonna be super chalk. I'm still okay with it. Gonna play 28, right around 28 minutes most nights. Actually sees a little bit of a usage bump without Sam Decker on the floor. A little bit of boost in his production as well. So I like George Hill a significant amount. Cash games, tournaments, someone that I'm going to have a lot of exposure to over on DraftKings. Over on FanDuel, however, it's a little bit of a different story at 5,400. I can get Derrick Rose for 5,500 in a game that is a little bit more appealing. So that's going to be my pivot there. But over on FanDuel or DraftKings, 4K, just way too cheap. I do like Jordan Clarkson a little bit. Did close that game out last time out when Decker was out of the lineup. I'm okay with rolling him out in all formats again. Just a guy monster usage off the bench. Chetty Osman's probably going to move down to the 4, which boosts his upside a little bit because he's going to be playing a little bit closer to the basket. Not the greatest matchups. Jeremy Grant is a good defender, but Chetty Osman in cash is fine. Going to play a ton of minutes there. The rest of the guys, Rodney Hood, going to play a decent amount of minutes. It's Rodney Hood. Roll him out in tournaments if you want to. J.R. Smith, expect to come out and play a few extra minutes and shoot a lot and be J.R. Smith. Tournaments, definitely someone to consider there. And then Tristan Thompson, a little bit priced up, but someone that you can consider in cash. Going to play a lot of minutes, I think, to kind of battle with Steven Adams down low. I'm not convinced this is going to lead to more minutes for Larry Nance with Sam Decker being out. Again, tournaments only, but someone that you can definitely consider. But again, I don't think he's going to get just a bunch of minutes now that Sam Decker is out. Moving on to the next game of the night, Detroit at Orlando, 211.5 over under. Detroit 1.5 point favorites. Not going to spend too much time on this game. There's not a whole lot that I absolutely love, except for Ish Smith. Ish Smith is a guy at 4,200 that I absolutely love in this spot. Opposing point guards are shooting almost 48% from the floor against Orlando this season and 41% from 3 against Orlando this season. Ish is just really underpriced. Historically, he's a fantasy point, right around a fantasy point per minute guy. He has not played very well recently, but he's still getting the minutes. I mean, 31, 29, 26, 28, 26, 26, 33, 28, 29. Minutes are there for him. His biggest issue lately is he's not been shooting the ball very well. Over his last 5 games, he has shot 32% from the floor and 25% from 3. On the season, though, he is shooting 45% from the floor and 37% from 3. So, like, he's shooting 13% lower than his season average from the floor and 12% lower than his season average from 3. Those numbers are going to come up. And in a spot against Orlando and what could be, it's just a really good spot. And like people just aren't going to look there. I have a lot of interest in Ish Smith here. So I've already talked about 2 really, really good value options with Smith and George Hill. So that's definitely a good way to go tonight, I think, building your lineup construction. And then 4,600, I'm okay with that. I still think I like Derrick Rose a little bit more. And then another option that we're going to get to in one of the other games. But I'm fine with Ish Smith in all formats. Reggie on DraftKings, a little bit underpriced. I'm okay with taking a shot on him in tournaments. Outside of that, Blake and Drummond always GPP appeal. I can't pay the prices tonight. There's other places I want to look, but I'm fine with both of those options in tournaments. We know Drummond has monster upside. Has not actually done very good against Vucevic in the past, if you believe in that kind of thing. And then, of course, Blake, we just know the usage is going to be there. But 9,900, really, really tough to pay for tonight whenever you have guys like LeBron, who is not that much more expensive. And Paul George, who is cheaper, and someone else that we're going to get to a little bit later that I love even more. But outside of that, flipping over to the Orlando side of things, the last 4 have been really, really good for Aaron Gordon. Expect him to produce solid numbers with Isaac's sideline. Averages right around a fantasy point per minute without Isaac on the floor. It is a good spot here for him. The Pistons really struggle against post-ups. They are giving up 0.97 points per possession on post-ups. And Aaron Gordon, a guy that is posting up a decent amount so far this season, about 17% of his possessions are post-ups. I like Aaron Gordon, still really, I think, underpriced at his current price tag, $7K on DraftKings. He is 8,100 on FanDuel, so I like Aaron Gordon a decent amount. I like Vucevic in this spot. Detroit ranks 23rd in defensive efficiency against centers on the year. They're allowing 14 points, 14 rebounds per game to the position. Opposing centers are shooting 55% from the floor against them. Vooch, past few meetings, 43.8, 60.5, and 47.5 fantasy points against Drummond. So I like Vucevic a significant amount in the spots. The other guy I think is very, very interesting. And this, well, three guys. This depends heavily on Evan Fournier news. If Fournier plays, I like him in tournaments. If he sits, that's going to open things up. DJ Augustine, still too cheap. Only took 2 shots against Cleveland, but without Jonathan Isaac on the floor this season, 2% usage boost and plus 6 fantasy points per 36 minutes. I like him a decent amount here. Still think I'm going to go George Hill, Ish Smith, and some other guys that we're going to talk about over him, but another way to get exposure to this game if you really, really want to. If Fournier misses this game, DJ Augustine, someone to definitely consider, gets an even larger boost. I think I have it. So let me pull it up here real quick. Gets an even larger boost without Fournier on the floor. Let's see. Let me find. There we go. Some interesting numbers to look at here. Terrence Ross is going to get a little bit of a boost. Jonathan Simmons is going to get a little bit of a boost, but without those two guys on the floor, DJ Augustine, 24.3% usage rate, 1.1 fantasy points per minute. Very small sample size for that, but definitely someone to consider. Terrence Ross, 155-minute sample size this season, 29% usage rate, 0.97 fantasy points per minute without Fournier on the floor. And Aaron Gordon, 26% usage rate, 1.11 fantasy points per minute. So guys to definitely consider if Evan Fournier were to miss this game. Moving on, we're going to do the Knicks at Atlanta just because the next game, the Spurs game, is blah. New York favored by 1, 220.5 over under in this one. Tim Hardaway Jr. no longer on the injury report. Tim Hardaway Jr. in a revenge game against the Atlanta Hawks. Roll him out if you want. 7,800. That's a steep price tag, but Tim Hardaway Jr. for the amount of shots that he's going to take and the production he can put up in a fast-paced game against a really bad defense, I have absolutely no issue building around him. I'm gonna lean more towards tournaments just because I know he's not on the injury report, but that back injury does concern me just a touch. So someone to at least consider in tournaments. Probably not going to go there in cash. I love Noah Vonleh in the spots. Atlanta 25th in defensive efficiency against power forwards. They've given up over 10 rebounds per game to the position and 4 combined steals and blocks to opponents. We know Noah Vonleh, a guy that can rack up steals and blocks, multiple steals and blocks in several games this season. Foul trouble, always a little bit of a concern, but this is just a spot where at 5,200 for Noah Vonleh on DraftKings, 53 over on FanDuel. I mean, that double-double upside that he has, really, really, really appealing in all formats. So I like Noah Vonleh a significant amount. Mitchell Robinson, really, really cheap. Foul-prone guy. Tournament upside for sure. What is he? 4,500. I'm okay with that in tournaments. Still not someone I'm going to look at in cash games just because, he is young. They want to get him minutes, but sometimes can't keep his hands to himself. That's very concerning. Definitely not someone I want to rely on in cash. Cantor in tournaments. Monster upside. If he gets minutes, if Mitchell Robinson gets in foul trouble, Enes Kanter will get the minutes. So someone that I do like in tournaments. Frank Ntilikina losing some minutes here to Emmanuel Mudiay. On FanDuel, in this spot, I think Emmanuel Mudiay at 3,800, kind of like the nuts option in all formats. Like he has upside, tons of upside. I think he actually had a solid game his last time out. Yeah. 2 of his last 3 over 20 fantasy points. Obviously the Chicago game, double overtime, got a lot of run in that one though. So that was nice to see. He was going to play right around 24 25 minutes if that wasn't a double overtime game. 25 minutes against the Hawks. Yeah, I'm fine with that. I like Moutier a lot over on FanDuel. Again, I think he's the nuts tournament and cash game like value option over there. And then at 3,500, I definitely have some interest in him in tournaments over on DraftKings. With Tim Hardaway Jr. coming back, that's going to take the shine off of Alonzo Trier, Damian Dotson. What is Dotson's price? I'm still okay at 5,300 with Dotson. What is he over on FanDuel? 5,200. I'm still okay with him in all formats over on both sites. So I still think you can roll him out. But yeah, moving on, we have the Atlanta Hawks side of things. Gonna have to wait on the news for Taurean Prince. If he plays over on DraftKings at 5,900, I love taking a shot on him in tournaments. It's going to be a hard pass on Taurean Prince at 6,800 on FanDuel. If he sits, I realized Trae Young was a disappointment last night, but the production's still going to be there for him in a lot of these games. Still monster usage, still monster fantasy point per minute guy. Turnovers always a concern. I mean, just massive amount of turnovers, but look at those assist numbers. That's just insane. Field goal attempts going to be there for him. If a couple of these 3-pointers actually fell last night, he's putting up a really, really, really good game at that $7,300 price tag. $7,600, a little tough, but it is a good spot for him. I have a ton of interest in him in tournaments regardless, but if Taurean Prince is out, I still love him even in cash. And if Prince is out, I'm going to go back to the well on Bazemore. The defensive stats saved him last night. Got a little bit of early foul trouble, but again, usage, fantasy production is there whenever Prince is off the floor. And then Kevin Huerter and DeAndre Bembry, guys that I do have a lot of interest in. Bembry did not play very well last night, but still almost got 30 minutes. So someone that I'm 100% okay with going back to the well there. And then Huerter, just a guy who's going to shoot. And I mean, did get some defensive stats again last night. I have a lot of interest in him there. Jeremy Lin, a value option to consider, especially in tournaments. Revenge game, I guess. And then also if Prince is out, Lin would get a couple extra minutes. And then the other Lin, Alex Lin, someone that I have a lot of interest in all formats tonight. Moving on, San Antonio at Miami. 216.5 over under in this one. Miami favored by 2. Spurs going to be without Rudy Gay, without Pau Gasol, but Derek White is going to come back. I'm not going to go to Derek White tonight. I think it's going to take him a little bit of time to get reacclimated to things, but this is an interesting spot for the Spurs side. With Gay and Pau being out, LMA, LaMarcus Aldridge, and DeMar DeRozan, interesting usage numbers. LaMarcus Aldridge, 27% usage rate, 1.23 fantasy points per minute in 90 minutes without those two guys. He's going to play a lot of minutes at the 5, and I think that bodes really well for him tonight. I actually like him in all formats, cash, tournaments, especially at that price tag, $7,900. Production has not been great for Aldridge recently. He did have that big game against New Orleans, but several down games. I still think this is a great spot for him. Someone that I'm definitely going to be going back to the well with. DeRozan, really expensive, $9,200, and what is he? $9,200, both sides. But without Pau Gasol and without Rudy Gay on the floor this season, 42.7% usage rate, 1.47 fantasy points per minute. I would be locking some of that in for tournaments. I have a lot of interest in DeRozan in tournaments. Davis Bertans, you can punt with him and on FanDuel. I'm probably not going to go there on DraftKings. I guess in tournaments, if you're building a bunch of lineups, sure. Jakob Poeltl could get about 18 minutes is what I currently have him projected for. He can get on top of his salary, but again, not someone that I just have a lot of faith in or that I really, really like. Marco Bellinelli continues to put up decent numbers, 4,200. I'm okay with that in all formats. On the Miami side of things, not really anything that I'm terribly intrigued by. Josh Richardson in cash is fine. Goran Dragic, his price is fine. Just not going to be forcing that when there's better options on the slate. Bam Adebayo would be a guy I would have a lot of interest in if Hassan Whiteside were to miss this game. And Kelly Olynyk would be your tournament option. Obviously, did not put up monster numbers, but 10 field goal attempts in that last outing, still about 30 fantasy points. So someone to consider there in tournaments as a hedge off of what would be a chalk Bam Adebayo if Hassan Whiteside were to sit. Moving on, we have Philly at the Pacers. Not a whole lot of interest in this game. Indiana 2.5 point favorites, 216 over under. Joel Embiid 11-4 on DraftKings. Really, really, really expensive. 11-3 on FanDuel. Tournaments cash, he's fine. I just don't want to pay that price. Like, that's just way too expensive. And in a matchup, like, it's not that great. Like, Embiid's probably going to get you 50 plus fantasy points. Might hit that 60 mark, but I just would rather look elsewhere for that 11K ish salary. But Ben Simmons is a triple double threat every single night, 9,600 and 9,500, perfectly fine cash in tournaments. Just not the best game, I think, to target. Not the best matchup for Ben Simmons, but someone you can consider. Mike Muscala is out, and Covington is a game time decision. Wilson Chandler's only going to get 15 minutes. Like, that's his hard cap. Can't really play Wilson Chandler at 15 minutes, but like if Covington sits this game out, I don't know how you don't go back to the well with Dario Saric. Like, I know he's been terrible. He has just been brutal, absolutely brutal recently. Well, pretty much all season, but 4,800 Dario Saric. You have to imagine getting 30 plus minutes tonight. I have to go back to Dario Saric in the spot. Like, I realize it's probably going to burn me, but 4,800 Dario Saric, he's going to get on top of that salary at some point, and I want to be exposed to Saric whenever he does. So Covington misses, Dario Saric, a guy I'm going to have a hard time not just going back to, locking him in. It's just really cheap. You don't really have a lot of interest in Covington in the spots. Obviously, minutes would open up for Landry Shamet if Covington were to miss, but I don't really have a lot of interest in him, especially where he's, point guard only eligible. Like, that's not really appealing in any fashion. So, yeah, that pretty much does that. I guess Redick is fine off the bench. Fultz in tournaments. Again, it's not really a game I really want to target too much. Victor Oladipo, 8,700, a little bit interesting on the Indiana side of things. 8,900 over on FanDuel. We know the usage is going to be there. We know the minutes are going to be there. Philly actually struggling against spot-up shooters this season. They are giving up 1.11 points per possession to the spot-up shooters on the season. That makes Oladipo a little bit interesting. But again, more of a tournament option, I think, for me in the spot. The only real interest I have, really, really cheap, Thad Young. Philly ranks 30th in defensive efficiency against power forwards on the season. Thad Young, we know the minutes are going to be there for him. Has played, 30 plus in the majority of games this season. We know he has double-double upside. I have a hard time not imagining that he's going to get 24, 26 fantasy points with the chance for more in this spot. So Thaddeus Young at 4,900 is a revenge game. So there's that narrative. Really hard time getting away from that price on him. I like Sabonis a significant amount in tournaments. Same with Miles Turner. One of these guys is going to have a decent game here. I'm probably leaning towards Sabonis. There's some things that I've seen on tape, which I'll probably try to outline in the Discord chat, that leads me to believe that Turner might start losing a lot of playing time unless some things actually change. But Sabonis, a guy that I have some interest in this spot. Moving on to another game that's not very appealing. Denver-Memphis. Woohoo. 206 over under, 3.5 point favorites for Denver. Uh, Denver defense, not really someone that I want to target too much. I mean, they're only giving up 102 points per game. You can still go with like Mike Conley and like Marc Gasol. I think in tournaments, they're Denver's about league average in defensive efficiency against both point guards and centers. Conley is cheap, 7,300 for Mike Conley. I feel pretty good in this spot with Mike Conley coming off a bad game. I'm definitely willing to go back to the well with Conley here. And again, Marc Gasol, definitely someone that I would have interest in tournaments. Actually has had some success against Jokic, if I recall correctly. Outside of those two, though, Shelvin Mack, Garrett Temple, decent value plays. Not guys that I'm just forcing into my lineups, though. Jaren Jackson Jr., obviously foul trouble is a major concern, but at 4,900 over on DraftKings. And 4,900 on DraftKings. We'll just leave it at that. Soen has lots of tournament upside. This game just not terribly appealing. Even on the Denver side of things, Murray coming off a monster game against Boston, it's really inflated his price. People are probably going to chase that game. I guess in tournaments, sure. I respect the Memphis defense a little bit too much to really want to force that. Gary Harris is 6K. A lot of minutes. He's going to play a ton of minutes, and you're just getting a safe floor in cash games with those minutes. 7K on FanDuel, not going to look there, but at 6K, it's going to get you 30 plus fantasy points most nights, and at 6K, like, it's not great, but in cash games, I'll take it. Jokic has had a couple monster games against Gasol, makes him tournament viable for me. His lower price tag, under 9K, very appealing over on DraftKings. 9,200, I'm going to be looking elsewhere on FanDuel. But, still tournaments definitely has monster upside. So that would, again, tournaments, a lot of appeal there, but not really in cash. Malone's going to continue to ride the hot hand with Torrey Craig, Malik Beasley, Juancho Hernan-Gomez. He has been leaning towards Hernan-Gomez a little bit more, which has been appealing. Hernan-Gomez has played, mid to upper 20s in 3 straight. Showed some upside against Cleveland, looked bad and against 2 strong defenses. Someone you can get some exposure to in tournaments on DraftKings. On FanDuel, I'm definitely okay with using him as a punt option at 3,900. I have interest in Trey Lyles here, 4,800. Over on FanDuel, he is 4,400 on DraftKings. He's cash viable for me in the spot, even though it's a tougher matchup. Did get some minutes alongside Millsap last game, which was good to see. I still have a lot of interest in Trey Lyles. Just one of these nights, like, something's going to happen to Paul Millsap, and Trey Lyles is going to play like 30 plus minutes, and you're going to wish you had him. 20 fantasy points is pretty much his floor. I mean, scrolling through this, like, Phoenix, he sucked, but, like, over 20 fantasy points in all but 2 games this season. 4,400, I'll take that as a value option, so I like him a decent amount here. That does that. Let's move to an appealing game here. Chicago, New Orleans. 230.5 over under. 10.5 point favorites for New Orleans. Looking at the Chicago side of things, Zach LaVine, 8,500 over on DraftKings. He is 9K on FanDuel. It's still usage. I obviously am a little bit concerned about the individual matchup with Jrue Holiday, but yeah, I'm 100% okay with going back to the well with LaVine. Pelicans do struggle in isolation. 16% of his possessions come in isolation, ranks about the 70th percentile. Again, usage rate over 30%. Yeah, it's tough to get away from LaVine, especially if you have a lot of interest in the Pelicans side of this game, which I do. Wendell Carter Jr., foul trouble is always going to be a concern, but he's still a guy massive upside even at 6,200. We saw him foul out against the Knicks. If he can keep his hands to himself, he could easily put up, a 14 and 13 line in the spot. The Pelicans do struggle to defend in the paint. Wendell Carter Jr., let's see, 45% of his shots come at the rim, 28% in the paint. I'm okay with Wendell Carter Jr. in all formats. On DraftKings, over on FanDuel, still going to be a fade until FanDuel moves him to center or changes his price. In tournaments, I think you take some shots on Felicio or Robin Lopez as a hedge for the Wendell Carter Jr. Foul trouble. Okay. So yeah, I think you use one of these guys if you're trying to hedge that Wendell gets in foul trouble. Justin Holiday at 4,700 narrative going against his brother. I'm fine with that price. Gonna shoot a lot and play a lot of minutes. Just doesn't really have a monster ceiling, but again, 4,700. That's a pretty appealing price tag. 5,200. I'm okay with that in cash and tournaments. Cameron Payne, gonna get right around 30 minutes. Has been shooting really, really poorly. Let's see, what is he? He's 3 of 17 from 3-point range over his last 6 games. Payne's going to have monster games. He's going to have shit games, more shit games than monster games. But I'm fine with him in all formats, especially in a fast-paced game like this. I do like Blakeney a significant amount. Not going to get a ton of minutes, but if he gets you, right around that 20-minute mark, can definitely crush his $3,700 salary on DraftKings. He is pretty cheap over on FanDuel at 3,800. Archdiakono, someone else to get some exposure to in tournaments. And then we have to talk about Jabari Parker, going to be popular. I'm fine with him in all formats. Takes a usage hit, takes a production hit whenever he's playing alongside Zach LaVine. But at 5,800, perfectly fine in cash. 6,800, tournaments only on FanDuel. The Pelican side of this game, Niko Mirotic, revenge game, going up against the Bulls. 8,300, 8,400. I'm smashing that lock button. I'm just gonna do it. I don't give a damn. Don't care what his ownership is. Taking a ton of shots every single night, pulling down double-digit rebounds. Bulls ranked 28th in defensive efficiency against power forwards. There's really nothing else to say. Fade at your own risk. I still like Jrue Holiday a significant amounts. Price up at 8,600 and 8,800. I'm going to take Holiday over LaVine 9 times out of 10. Both sites, just because Holiday's a model of consistency. He just does more on the floor. At his current price, upside is a little bit capped, so not someone that I'm terribly excited about in tournaments. But in cash games, I'm going to take that 40-plus fantasy points that he's going to give me most nights and just run with it. Davis, tournaments only. I want to see that he's healthy, but we know, whenever he's going to put up a monster game, it's going to really, really suck to not have some exposure to him. So tournaments for sure. Cash games, I'm going to be looking elsewhere. And then each one more, just a guy going to play a lot of minutes. Didn't do it against OKC, but yeah, most nights he's going to play a lot of minutes, so I'm fine getting exposure there. Dallas, Utah. Woo. This game's not exciting at all. Utah favored by 10, 217.5 over under. Donovan Mitchell expected to come back in this game. I would love to get some tournament exposure to Donovan Mitchell at 7,400 on DraftKings. What is he over on FanDuel? 8,500. I'm going to pass on that, but Dallas struggles against three-point shooters. They struggle on defense. They struggle against wings. They struggle against guards. Donovan Mitchell, obviously you're a little bit concerned. There is some re-injury risk with him. Yeah, Donovan Mitchell has monster upside in the spot, so he's someone that I would get some exposure to. We just know he's going to shoot a lot. and that shot's gonna fall most nights. Some nights he might struggle, but that shot's gonna fall most nights. And if he gets you, 30, if he gets you this 40 plus fantasy points that we know he has the ability to do in a good matchup, I'm gonna take that all night long, and he's gonna be super low owned in the spot. So I have a lot of interest in Donovan Mitchell for tournaments. Joe Ingles, a guy listed questionable for this game. I'm sure I expect him to play at 6,200. I have a decent amount of exposure or interest in him. Again, Dallas really struggles to defend the 3-point line. They struggle against spot up shooters. Really good spot for him tonight. So someone that I would get some exposure to. Rubio, I'm going to be looking elsewhere unless something were to happen with Donovan Mitchell. Jay Crowder, revenge game. Still just going to play, right around that 30-minute mark in a very, very good matchup. 5,500 on DraftKings, 5,300 on FanDuel. I have a lot of interest in Crowder. It's a really, really good spot for him. Someone that you can build around if you so choose. Derek Favors, just way too cheap, 4,800. Obviously not an ideal matchup whenever you have to deal with DeAndre Jordan down low, gobbling up rebounds, but 4,800 for Derek Favors, way too cheap, and what should be a somewhat faster paced game against a really, really bad defense. So good spot for Favors. DeAndre Jordan just smashed in this spot last time out. Opponents are shooting like 66% at the rim against the Jazz this season. DeAndre Jordan, we know most of his shots coming at the rim. I like him in tournaments. 7,300. That's way too cheap for DeAndre Jordan in the spot. Cash game viable even at that price, but definitely monster tournament upside. And then Gobert, we saw him pull down like 1,000 rebounds against the Mavericks last time out. It was actually 16, but 23 points, 16 rebounds. 8K monster upside for him here. So I have some interest in Gobert. I don't know why I skipped over to DeAndre Jordan while I was talking about Utah, but whatever. Yeah, so I already covered DeAndre Jordan. Dennis Smith Jr. in tournaments. We know that opponents can get to the rim pretty easily against Utah. No one's going to have him, and that's appealing. Coming off a really, really good game. Actually had a good game against Utah last time out. Dennis Smith Jr., a guy, a lot of tournament upside in this spot for sure. Probably not going to go with Luka. Probably not looking really anywhere else outside of maybe Harrison Barnes, who's going to play a lot of minutes. Game's just not terribly appealing. So, Toronto at Kings. Toronto 8-point favorites, 232 over under. This over under skyrocketed. It opened at 224. It's up to 232 now. And yeah, I have a lot of interest in this game, starting with the Toronto side of things. Kyle Lowry, even if Kawhi plays, I still really like Kyle Lowry. I realize if Kawhi plays, people are going to move off of him. Obviously, usage numbers go down. Production takes a little bit of a hit. Averaging 1.17 fantasy points per minute with Kawhi on the floor. That's still really damn good. And this is still a really fast-paced game. Kings defense, not good. I'm still okay with Kyle Lowry regardless of what happens with Kawhi Leonard. But if Kawhi Leonard sits, Kyle Lowry's numbers increase to 1.55 fantasy points per minute with a 27% usage rate. If Kawhi is out, I'm mashing that lock button on Kyle Lowry in this spot. Kawhi Leonard's perfectly fine in all formats. A little bit pricey, especially over here like on DraftKings at 9,400. I would rather go with Paul George for a little bit cheaper. FanDuel 10-1. I would probably go with Paul George over him. In cash tournaments, sure. The biggest issue I have, I guess, is that we might not know about Leonard before lock, so it makes it a little bit tough over on FanDuel. I like Danny Green, close to a lock for me if Kawhi plays. Just 4,300, just way too cheap. 0.82 fantasy points per minute with Kawhi on the floor. I might use Danny Green in the spot even if Kawhi sits. Yeah, Kings just really bad against wings, shooting guards, point guards, small forwards. They just really struggle against wings. And it's a really good spot for Danny Green. I like it a lot. So Danny Green's someone that I'm probably just going to be using as a core option to get cheap exposure to this game. So um, Serge Ibaka, obviously shooting really, really well recently. Uh, don't expect that to continue, but he's just been so good this season, especially in this offense with him moving down to the five. I think he's going to get more run. Obviously, he fouled out against Utah, but I think he's going to get 28, 30 minutes tonight in a spot against the Kings defense that really struggles to defend the rim, really struggles to rebound at times. Serge Ibaka, a core option for me on DraftKings, 5,300, way too cheap. Just way, way, way too cheap. 6,200, that's a fair price. I still like him a significant amount. Jonas Valanciunas in tournaments is fine. And Siakam, a guy, I'm not going to be all in on him unless we get news that Kawhi is out. Flipping over, Fred VanVleet, a guy you can consider for cash value. Flipping over to the Sacramento side of things, not terribly interested in this game, especially on not terribly interested in this side of the game, especially on FanDuel, where Fox is like 8K, Buddy Hield is 7,700, Willie Cauley-Stein is 7,100, Bielitsa is 6,700. But like DraftKings 6,300 for De'Aaron Fox. No, it's not the greatest spot, but yeah, 6,300 De'Aaron Fox is just way, 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 way too cheap here. Dude has monster upside even in a tough matchup. It's worth noting Toronto's transition defense has not been very good this season. They're giving up 1.2 points per possession in transition. They're also kind of struggling against the pick and roll ball handler. 0.97 points per possession allowed in the pick and roll. De'Aaron Fox, 24% of his possessions this season come in transition, averaging 6.2 points per possession in transition, ranks in the 73rd percentile. Against in the pick and roll, 43% of his possessions so far this season averages 6.2 points per game in the pick and roll. So 12.5 points per game come for Fox in plays that on plays that Toronto kind of struggles to defend. That has me very, very interested in De'Aaron Fox, especially at his price tag. I'll just leave it at that. Buddy Hield on DraftKings and tournaments is fine. Bielitsa is fine in tournaments on DraftKings. You're fading anyone from the Sacramento side on FanDuel outside of maybe like Marvin Bagley, who is like mid 5Ks, is 5K. Just in case this game like just goes monster blowout, Bagley would get a little bit of extra run. So I'm fine with him in tournaments on both sites. And finally, last game of the night, Minnesota at LA. LA favored by 5.5 in this one. 240.5 over under. Holy mackerel. 240.5. That might be the highest over under I have ever seen. And there is a lot to like from this side of the game, both sides of the game. Looking at Minnesota with Jeff Teague out, Derrick Rose gonna play 33, 35 minutes, 5,600, and what is he? 5,500. Yeah, I don't care what his ownership is like, and I know, it's been tough to trust the guards with Minnesota because they're available to play or they're going to play or they're going to start and then they're late scratches. 5,600. I'm paying that price for Derrick Rose. All formats. I'm mashing that lock button on Derrick Rose in this spots. Gonna shoot a ton. It's a good matchup. Yeah, I like Derrick Rose. 1 second. Had a sneeze and it went away. I like Jimmy Butler if he plays. Unfortunately, he is questionable for this game because no one knows what Jimmy Butler's going to do. He's been non-committal about whether he's going to play every single night. 8,200. It's a really, really good spot for him. Fast-paced game. Should be able to notch a couple, couple steals, some defensive numbers. I love him in all formats. 8,200 on DraftKings. Really, really good option. 9,200 on FanDuel. Still a really good option. I imagine we'll know before lock if he's going to play or not. Wiggins, fine in tournaments, 6K. Really tough to get away from that price tag. Over on DraftKings, over on FanDuel, 6,400 again. Definitely a good tournament option. Taj Gibson, cheap in cash, 4,500. Definitely don't hate going there with Taj Gibson. What is he on FanDuel? 4,900. I'm fine with that in all formats. It's a really good price for Taj Gibson. And then Karl Anthony Towns, 9,400 and 8,800. Has been playing better with Jimmy Butler. I'll just leave it at that. Had a monster game against the Lakers last time out. I still like Karl Anthony Towns a significant amount, and if Jimmy Butler were to miss, we know the usage is going to fall to Towns. So I like him in all formats. It feels really, really uncomfortable to say that I like Karl Anthony Towns in cash, but I like Karl Anthony Towns in cash. I'm not going to be looking at any of the bench guys, Tyus Jones, Josh Okogie, just because the minutes aren't really going to be there for him unless Jimmy Butler were to sit. I mean, even Okogie got 20 minutes. Yeah, it's just not enough for me to really, really like him in the spots. On the Lakers side of things, LeBron, excellent option, all formats. I love him. Cash tournaments, really good spot. Minnesota, terrible defense. Yeah. Brandon Ingram, way too cheap. Way too cheap at 5,700. What is he over on? 5,900. Way too cheap. I'll just leave it at that. He's going to be a core option for me. Like I'm trying to fit him in all my lineups. He's just way too cheap. Has monster upside in a matchup like this. So I will be getting a lot of Brandon Ingram. I like Kuzma a decent amount. Both guys should see right around 30 plus minutes. I'm fine with either one. I'm leaning Ingram just because he's the cheaper option, but Kuzma is super cheap as well. So both guys definitely good options. Lonzo Ball and Rondo, I love them both in tournaments. Oh, Dwayne Wade is out. Interesting. That's going to change things for Miami a little bit, but let's see what else. What other news we got? Hassan Whiteside expected to play. Yeah, Lonzo Ball, Rajon Rondo, both guys would definitely be getting some tournament exposure too, especially at these price tags. Like most nights, Lonzo's going to play more minutes than Rondo, and most nights, Lonzo Ball is going to fill up the stat sheet. Goran Dragic questionable. Interesting. So yeah, I have a lot of interest in Ball in tournaments. I have a lot of interest in Rondo in tournaments. In cash, it's easily Derrick Rose, but both Lonzo and Rondo, excellent options in tournaments, with Lonzo being the guy I prefer a little bit more. And I still love JaVale McGee in this spot. Just consistency. He's been like the model of consistency with the exception of like 1 or 2 games. So, and I don't expect Tyson Chandler to just eat into his minutes like at all. So yeah, that does it. I'll cover the Miami stuff in Discord once we get some more news. I'm not terribly intrigued by that game anyway, so it doesn't really change a whole lot for me. But I will talk about that in Discord if anything changes there. But good luck in all your contests tonight, and I'll be back on Friday.